There are so many options today to fund your company. For us in Genome Compiler, we did almost everything. So we had angel money in convertible note. We had a big company doing strategic investment. We had a crowdfunding campaign. We had a crowdfunding campaign through AngelList, Invest Online. This is totally new. We had grants from governments, like DARPA contract. We have contract from customers. So you have so many ways. You have to try as an entrepreneur to try everything.
I will move forward. I can see that CEOs and CFOs that consult advisors in each and every step of the way. They do that in order to prepare their company appropriately to a future exit, a future IPO. Did you guys consult with others while building your company? And what was the valuable advice that you have received back then and that you can offer to the audience? Maryse, maybe you want to start.
I had a very similar experience to Slava when I was raising money, when I came up with a concept for my company back in '97. And I can tell you from experience, it was more than a challenge, one that I wasn't ready for. I had graduated university and had this, in my mind, the best idea ever. And I thought this is going to be, easy. I really just want to. I started my company with one concept in mind. I was watching a television show and I saw something on TV that I wanted. And this is during dial-up when people were not downloading anything from the internet, when there were 35 millimeter cameras with 35 millimeter film. And I saw this item that I wanted on TV and I snapped a photo with my 35 millimeter camera and brought it to a Photoshop and 3 days later got the photos back. And I gave the photos to someone to help me find what I was looking for, and I couldn't find it. So I thought it would be so cool just to be able to poke on the object of interest and just get a search result. I just want to know where I can find it. And I didn't want to generate any revenue. I just wanted to build this product. So I spent 2 years doing that, and then I realized I need a job or I need money. So I started raising money. But this is, during that bubble, and it was tough. So the best piece of advice I got was from a venture capitalist who called himself a vulture capitalist and said, don't take money from a VC. He's like, find people who believe in you, find people who believe in your product, and get them to invest. And it really was the best piece of advice I ever got. We're still privately held. We're going through an acquisition now. And if I had done anything differently, and I think about other companies that were kind of in the same space as my company that raised hundreds of millions of dollars and failed. And these are people with, blue chip backgrounds from great companies and degrees from some of the best schools in the world, and they all failed. So, it really, you can try to put the best team together. You can have people with the best resumes and pedigrees, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the best recipe for success. But that is the best piece of advice I've gotten.
Thank you.
Well, as always, it depends on the stage of life. So if you ask when you're actually starting out, I would not recommend to anyone who's just starting a company to start solicit professional advice that costs them resources that they don't have. So that would be my advice. The advice would be that they would surround themselves, hopefully, with people who would believe in them or in what they're doing, and who can offer some experience and value of their own, but that would not cause them or the company to incur any costs. When you get later on, and the main things at the beginning is like where to incorporate and where to make sure that the IP is based. And if there's different things, any startup person who's worth their salt will find online the answers to all of that. If they're in the States, if they're in Europe or in Israel, that's all cookie cutter at the beginning. Later on, when this is actually at a point where there is revenues and, God forbid, profits, that's a point where I would start making sure that I'm consulting with some people who can help me structure the corporation in a way that will hopefully maximize the profits down the road.
I would agree with you, with whatever you said. I mean, I would take a consultant that would guarantee that his consulting is good. I mean, but I still did not find such a consultant that he takes responsibility for what he says. I mean, so it's about compromising with your resources. If you can afford it, of course, go ahead. If not, try to settle for people who believe in you, or people who can really, like, more experienced people who can give you advice.
I must say that unlike what Amit said, I'm as a consultant seeing many young startups coming to consult. And these days, I think that many people learn that if you do not consult early, later on, it may be very, very, very expensive. And I think that people working with this industry are aware of the financial situation of the startup, taking it into account, and do not cost so much, so to enable them to consult, build it right from the beginning, and not pay much more later on. And one of the issues that is coming up all the time, you said you can find it on the internet, I'm not sure about that, is the structure. Many of us, and I don't know about the European, many of the Israeli startups are thinking about how to be incorporated as an Israeli company, a US company, US-Israeli, Israeli-US. And I wonder, how does it work in Europe? I mean, do you even consider building it up as a US corporation and not local, or is it straightforward local company?
You know, I know we have differences of opinions here, that's fair enough, but I would still think that any startup starting out, if they're focused on and spending money and resources on how to best incorporate for the eventuality of the future, they're not focused on what they should be focused. That's my opinion, and therefore my advice to consultants. Talking about when there are revenues and profits, absolutely there are, specifically in Europe, I would say, various corporate organizations and structures that one needs to consider, whether it's EU-based, in which country should the IP reside, where should various revenues fall in, where should a trading company be. There's a lot of things that you can do. There is a reason why the most big successful companies, whether you talk about Google, Facebook, Apple, there's a reason why their taxation is not as high as other folks. They've spent a lot of money consulting and figuring out the right structure for that. But again, that's at the point when there is something to actually preserve and protect.
I think for perhaps the startups who are in attendance here today, especially with some of the tax firms who are also present, you know, the reason behind many of these companies and the structure they've set up, many of those structures that are based in Ireland, there are tremendous tax advantages to be set up in Ireland, in the Silicon Docks area, and it's actually more and more cost effective. There are funds now that are looking to invest in companies who are willing to set up an office and have some level of administration there. But it, you know, also to be structured there, depending on the country of residence, whether it's European Union, United States, the corporate structure also needs to fall, as I'm sure you can share, the corporate structure needs to be folded into that entity, and then revenues need to be recognized in a certain way. It doesn't work for all companies. And it's actually becoming tougher in certain regions. But then I know I've recently read that there are other countries that are offering unique advantages and strategies. And Maryse, for example, is launching something next year that was just announced. So I think it's certainly, if there's an exit, you know, and a timeline in mind when that may happen, it can benefit a small company tremendously in the future, at least to have that in mind. You know, if someone has an Irish entity and they're acquired by a publicly traded company, there can be huge tax advantages for both sides. So I think it's certainly something to think about.
Try not to be complicated. I think as a technology startup, what we are doing is complicated enough. You don't want to complicate fundraising by being a very unique enterprise. For us, Delaware C Corp, that's what everybody is doing. Try to be simple. There are enough complications in your life, I guess.
That's actually a piece of advice that we give to the companies as well. For the last question, I would like to discuss an issue that was discussed again and again in the last few months, the question of government support. Do you think that government should support startup, and in what way?
Yes, I think the government may have a very important impact in supporting a digital system that is able to grow new jobs in a country. Even in my old experience, we started in an island in Sardinia to work on the internet because in 1992, Mr. Carlo Rubbia, which was a Nobel Prize winner from CERN in Geneva, came as a president to this innovation center and suggested to work on the web. The reason was that Tim Berners-Lee, 1 year before, in the team of Mr. Carlo Rubbia, started to write www because of giving help to the scientist community that were working with Carlo Rubbia. So, from a positive idea of the government to create an innovation center, and from the positive idea to focus this innovation center on the web, we had really the opportunity to create thousands of jobs in an island in which was not that easy to create jobs in advance. So far, in Italy, we are working in order, in Italy, as in other countries in Europe, you know, we are facing with the need to create new jobs. In the younger generation, below 25 years, we have almost 50% of unemployment. And as a whole, there is almost 20% of unemployment, which is a disaster for an economy. How to create new jobs? The idea to create new jobs, giving space, giving resources to the digital arena, I think, is a positive, a right choice. So in Italy at the moment, there is the idea to, taking a slogan, a popular slogan from the editor of Financial Times, to try to rethink the country digital first, trying to reconsider everything of the country in order to be digital first. The bureaucracy, the administration, the social services, everything to reinvent in a way that is reconsidered on a digital way. Such a project for a country can be very positive in order to give the humus, giving the opportunity to a lot of startups to come to the market, offer service, create jobs, create revenues, and eventually to grow and to be a success.
I certainly think it's important for governments to co-invest in growing new businesses and provide at least some either tax advantages or to create ways in which to create jobs in certain countries, especially in the United States. There were some unique strategies that our government used recently by taking data that they had collected for over 50 years and making that available to small startups to create new businesses. I thought it was a brilliant idea, and I'll give you one example. They gave one small company in Arizona access to medical emergency phone calls. And this company took all of that data and crunched all the numbers and found ways to redirect emergency phone calls to the closest hospitals based on the emergency medical call. So they actually ended up saving money for the community, saving lives, creating ways for the appropriate doctors to be on call in certain regions. So I think governments have access to data now in the digital space that can be repurposed that didn't exist before. And I thought that was a really interesting and unique way for a government to invest.
I think that if you look at history in our civilization, you'd see that GDP growth corresponds to technology growth. And the market is very good at taking ideas and commercializing them. But basic research, it's something that government should invest more on. Especially here in Israel, we see a lot of researchers going to get the Nobel Prize somewhere else. And I'm a reform academician, so I was in a PhD postdoc. I know the value of that world. So definitely basic research is so important. I'm just thinking about my company. We couldn't exist unless huge investment in DNA synthesis and sequencing and all the basic research around biology. That's the most important thing, I guess.
I would say I believe in markets and in self-selection. And I think we're looking at if we're talking about startups and entrepreneurships, there are many elements that create a good entrepreneurship environment. The reason that Silicon Valley is so successful, and the reason that here in Tel Aviv or in Israel entrepreneurship is successful is not necessarily due to direct government involvement. I think government should, in my opinion, should be involved just in an indirect manner, meaning helping create and foster an environment that can grow entrepreneurship, meaning whether it's tax elements or whether it's providing facilities or an infrastructure of communications, things of that nature. I don't believe in government funding of startups. Pure research, of course, government should be involved with, and hopefully the outcome and the benefit of that will help foster, companies who may use that for pragmatic reasons. But I don't believe in direct involvement by government.
I would build off of what he said. I actually totally agree, but I'm just going to layer it with some more details. So I think that number one, I think it's about creating a physical ecosystem. I think like Silicon Valley, it's about having the presence. I think Tel Aviv does a really good job of that. Any city or country could do better of creating accelerators, institutions, and other physical areas of being able to create that ecosystem. So the way government can interact with that is making it easier to create that physical infrastructure. Number two would be for government to ease the opportunities to get out of the way. The Jobs Act in America is a perfect example of that. There was 6 portions to the Jobs Act across the financial stack, which made it easier and actually turned around laws from 1933. So much of the government often makes it harder to raise money. It makes it harder for entrepreneurship, so it's about making it easier. In the U.S. also, there's an issue, and I'm sure around the world, around getting immigrants and getting that talent to work in America. And I'm totally in support of being able to making that easier as well, having that global economy. Number 3 would be around actually experimenting with things like Chile is doing, which is doing matching grants around investors, around entrepreneurs that want to move to that country, basically an entrepreneurial aliyah, which is exactly what's happening in Chile. And number 4 is probably the one I most strongly believe in, which is the Kauffman Foundation is the largest nonprofit which is research about entrepreneurship in America, and they'll tell you that their research shows that all the net new jobs which was mentioned by the first person, I'm sorry, I don't know your name, but the jobs are the most important thing. All the net new jobs in America in the last 30 years have come from companies that are 5 years old or younger. To be clear, 5 years old or younger, all the net new jobs. So you need to stimulate entrepreneurship. And to me, by the time you graduate high school and college, all of your entrepreneurial instinct has been beat right out of you, because you need to become a doctor, a lawyer, a teacher, or whatever, beat right out of you. So the number one thing would be to be able to actually teach entrepreneurship, not in a theoretical way, but in an actionable way, starting in 7th grade for 10 years in America, for example. It'd be 7th and 8th, all of high school, which is through 12th, and then all of college, which would be 10 years of practicing entrepreneurship. So by the time you graduate, you are not afraid. And you could even call that practicing failure school, because failure is good, and you will learn to actually become an entrepreneur.
Well, in addition to what everybody said here. I mean, like investing in the startups is so important just to attract foreign money, I think, because like people, venture capitals or investors would like to see money on their money that they are investing. So I think there's the turn of the government is to bring those startups into a level that they can be acquired. So that's it.
Just to conclude this session and to thank everyone for participation, the audience as well, I would like to give just one another fact from the research that I've mentioned. According to that research, companies not backed by VC are more likely to fail than companies backed by VC in the first 4 years of their life. This is because they do not have enough required funds to continue working if their business model doesn't work. Companies backed by VCs are most likely to fail after the first 4 years when investors stop infusing capital. So this is another interesting point to take into consideration while deciding of whether to raise money, do it on your own, etc. So thank you all very much, and I hope that we will see startups getting bigger and becoming full-grown companies. Thanks.